The eels cut through the black expanse, its sleek hull scarred from countless battles, yet still resilient. Captain Celine Albright stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the approaching Treum fleet. The looming enemy ships filled the view screen, massive, with dark, angular designs that seemed to draw in the light. The Trion had been relentless, and Earth's last defenders now found themselves facing an overwhelming force, a force that had already crushed the last remaining colonies. But Celine wasn't ready to give in. Not yet. "We'll hold them as long as we can," she muttered, almost to herself, her voice steady but full of purpose. She didn't need to say more. Her crew knew what was at stake. The bridge was quiet except for the hum of the ship's engines and a low buzz of incoming communications. Lieutenant Mira, her tactical officer, was focused on the battle map, tracking the positions of both human and Trion forces. "They're coming in fast, Captain. If we don't act soon, they'll breach the defensive perimeter." Celine glanced at the tactical screen. The enemy fleet, vast and implacable, was already closing in on Earth's orbital defense grid. The last line of human defense had been shattered in the previous skirmishes, leaving only the Eos and its accompanying strike force standing between the Trion and the planet's final moments. "Set course to intercept," Celine ordered. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge of resolve in it that made her crew sit up straighter. "We'll buy Earth a few more hours." "Understood, Captain," Mira replied, her fingers flying over the controls, initiating evasive maneuvers and preparing weapons. The Eos lurched as its engines roared to life, propelling it toward the Trion fleet. Celine gripped the arms of her chair, eyes narrowing as she surveyed the enemy. She could feel the weight of Earth's fate pressing down on her, but she refused to show any sign of weakness. She had led her people through impossible odds before. This time would be no different. "All hands, brace for impact." Mira called out, her voice sharp. The Eos shook violently as the first volley of Trion fire slammed into its shields, the ship's hull groaning under the strain. The bridge lights flickered, but the crew held their ground. Celine's heart raced, but her mind stayed clear. They were outgunned, outnumbered, but she wasn't about to let her people go out without a fight. "Target their flagship," she ordered, her voice firm. "We take down the head, and the body will fall." "Firing torpedoes now," shouted Commander Jackson, the weapons officer. The Eos fired a burst of high-powered plasma torpedoes, the weapons streaking across the void toward the Trion flagship, Vraska. The explosion that followed illuminated the dark expanse, but the enemy flagship's shields absorbed the blast, leaving it unscathed. "Damn it," Mira hissed. "Their shields are too strong. We need to break through somehow." "We'll keep hammering at them," Celine said, her eyes still locked on the enemy ship. "Every shot counts." Suddenly, a flash of static interrupted the calm of the bridge. A transmission came through, garbled at first, then slowly forming into something coherent. The voice that came through was weak, but clear. "Captain Albright, this is Dr. Naomi Farren, Earth. Last hope." The voice crackled with static, but Celine could hear the urgency. "Dr. Farren?" Celine's breath caught in her throat. "Where are you? What's happened?" "Listen closely. It's not over. The artifact, it's hidden. The key to turning the tide." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Celine staring at the blank screen, her mind racing. The voice was faint, but the message was clear. Dr. Farren, one of humanity's greatest minds, had found something that could change everything. The artifact she spoke of could be the weapon they needed. but how to find it in the chaos? Captain, Mira's voice broke through her thoughts. The Triton flagship is launching a counterattack. They're going for the final blow. Get us out of here. Celine snapped. Plot a course. We're heading for the coordinates of Dr. Farron's last transmission. It's our only chance. As the Eos shifted course, dodging another wave of fire from the Triton fleet, Celine knew she was taking a huge risk. But in the heart of the storm, she saw a flicker of hope. The eternal dream was not just a distant vision. It was a fight that had just begun. Prepare for warp, she ordered. We're not going down without a fight. The Eos streaked through the black expanse of space, heading toward the last known coordinates of Dr. Farron's transmission. Earth was a distant memory now, its blue and green surface fading behind them as the ship tore through the stars. The hum of the warp engines filled the bridge, but it couldn't drown out the weight of Celine's thoughts. Dr. Farron's final message, cryptic and faint as it was now the only hope left for humanity. If that artifact could truly turn the tide, it was their last chance. Celine stared out at the swirling darkness ahead, lost in her thoughts. The artifact, the key to saving humanity. But where? How? The possibilities gnawed at her. She needed more information, more than that one desperate message had given her. Captain, Mira's voice brought her back to the present. We've hit the coordinates. There's nothing here, just an empty sector of space. Are you sure this is the right place? Celine's gut twisted. I'm sure. She moved forward, leaning over the tactical station to peer at the screen. The coordinates were precise, but there was nothing visible, just the endless void. Activate all scanners, she ordered. We can't afford to miss anything. The crew worked quickly, fingers flying over consoles. Minutes passed, then 5, 10. The tension in the air was palpable. Celine stood, pacing the bridge, as her thoughts raced. They couldn't have arrived at a dead end. They couldn't. Time was running out. Suddenly, a sharp tone broke the silence. Captain, we've got something. Mira's voice was filled with urgency. Celine snapped her head toward her. What is it? An energy signature. Faint, but definitely there. It's cloaked. Something is masking it, but we're picking it up. It's on the edge of the sector, at the coordinates Dr. Farron gave us. Celine's heart skipped a beat. Bring it up on screen. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing an enormous structure, half hidden behind a dense field of cosmic debris. A dark silhouette, the shape of a colossal ship or station, loomed in the distance. It was unlike anything humanity had ever built. The edges of the structure seemed to shimmer and distort, as if the fabric of space itself had been warped around it. Is that? Mira whispered, her voice filled with awe. That's it, Celine said, her voice resolute. That's the artifact, or at least its location. We can't just jump in there blind, Mira cautioned. There's something about that structure. It's not like anything we've encountered before. I know, Celine said, her jaw set. But if it's the key to saving humanity, we don't have a choice. Prepare a recon team. We're going in. The Eos's landing bay buzzed with activity as Celine geared up for the mission. Her command staff would accompany her, Mira, Jackson, and a small squad of elite soldiers. As she adjusted her armor, Celine's mind wandered back to the message from Dr. Farron. The woman had been a visionary, a mind far ahead of her time. The knowledge of the artifact, hidden away for so long, spoke volumes of the desperate measures humanity had taken to survive. Now it was in her hands. The responsibility felt heavier with each passing second. The weight of Earth's destruction still sat like a stone in her chest, but she couldn't afford to dwell on it. Her people needed her to lead, and that meant focusing on the future. In the belly of the Eos, the shuttle bay doors hissed open, revealing the dark void outside. The team gathered in the shuttle, a sleek, heavily armored craft designed for quick insertion into hostile environments. As the door sealed behind them, Celine glanced at her crew. "Stay sharp," she said, her voice calm but intense. "We don't know what we're walking into. But remember, this is humanity's last shot. We'll do this together." The shuttle shuddered as it disengaged from the Eos and glided toward the mysterious structure. As they neared, the structure loomed larger, and the feeling of unease grew stronger. The energy signature from earlier was now pulsing in irregular patterns, as if reacting to their approach. The structure wasn't passive. It was aware of them. "Captain, there's something off about this place," Jackson said, his voice taut. "It feels alive." Celine said nothing, her focus unwavering. They were too close now. They had no time for hesitation. The shuttle touched down with a soft thud on the surface of the structure, the exterior shimmering with an eerie glow. Celine took a deep breath, her hand resting on the door release. This was it. Humanity's future was in her hands. "Let's move," she said, stepping out of the shuttle and onto the unknown. The air inside the structure was thick with a strange, almost tangible energy that hummed beneath Celine's feet. The walls of the corridor ahead of them seemed to ripple, as if the very fabric of the space was being altered by an unseen force. Every step they took was met with an unsettling silence, broken only by the soft clinks of their boots on the metallic floor. There was no sign of life, no sign of any enemy forces, but the feeling of being watched was inescapable. "Stay close," Celine commanded, her voice cutting through the tension. The crew followed her, weapons at the ready, each of them uneasy, but resolute. They were humanity's last hope, and they would not falter now. The path ahead twisted and turned, the layout of the structure defying conventional geometry. Hallways bent at impossible angles, doors slid open and shut with a mind of their own, and strange symbols, like a language from another age, flickered across the walls. It was a place of mystery, as if it had been built by beings who had mastered not just technology, but the very nature of reality itself. "We're not dealing with any ordinary weapon," Mira muttered, her eyes scanning the environment. "This place is like a living organism. I don't know what's keeping it all intact, but it's not stable." Celine nodded. The structure felt wrong, but the energy signature was unmistakable. Whatever it was still functional, and it was their only chance. They reached the end of the corridor and stepped into a massive chamber, the ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. At the center of the room was a strange platform, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. Around it, floating in mid-air, were several smaller devices, circular, metallic objects that seemed to pulse with the same energy. There was something hypnotic about them, as if they were calling to the crew. "This must be it," Celine whispered, her breath steady despite the awe she felt. "This is the artifact." As they moved closer, the entire room seemed to respond. The energy in the air intensified, crackling like static electricity. Suddenly, the platform began to hum, and the symbols on the walls flickered to life. "Warning!" Jackson's voice came through the comms, sharp with concern. "This isn't just a weapon. This is something far more dangerous. We need to pull back." Before Celine could respond, the room shuddered violently. The lights dimmed, then flared back to life, casting long shadows that twisted unnaturally across the walls. The artifact's pulse grew louder, vibrating the floor beneath their feet. Suddenly, a deep, resonant voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in a language none of them understood. It was like nothing they had ever heard, ancient, alien, and incomprehensibly powerful. "Mira, can you translate that?" Celine asked, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the platform. "I know," Mira replied, her voice tight. It's not like anything in our database. This is something entirely new. It's speaking to us, but not in words, more like a direct transmission into our minds." The voice continued, its rhythm and cadence somehow unnerving, as though it was probing them, testing them. Then the pulse of energy intensified, and a flood of images filled Celine's mind. Visions of ancient cities, stars exploding, and vast, endless war. The images were chaotic, overwhelming, and alien. And then there was a vision of Earth, its cities burning, its people fleeing, everything being torn apart. It was a horrifying sight, one that nearly made Celine falter. This is the memory of the war that destroyed their civilization," she said quietly, her voice shaking despite her best efforts to remain composed. "They were destroyed by something far worse than the Triune." Suddenly, the energy pulsed again, and a figure materialized before them. At first, it was just a flicker, a shimmer in the air, but it grew stronger, more defined. It was humanoid, tall, slender, its form vaguely familiar, yet distinctly alien. Its features were hidden beneath an ornate helmet, but its presence was undeniable. The figure spoke, its voice a deep, resonant tone that seemed to reverberate through the very fabric of the room. "You are not ready," it intoned. "The time for your people to rise has not yet come." Celine felt her pulse quicken, a cold shiver running down her spine. This being was not a mere machine or program. It was something ancient, something that had been waiting, and now it had awakened. "What do you want from us?" she demanded, stepping forward, trying to hold her ground despite the overwhelming force of the entity's presence. The figure remained silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its words were slower, deliberate, as if it were choosing them carefully. "You seek to wield the power of the Forgotten Ones," it said, its voice cold and distant. "But you must first face the truth of your own nature. You are not the first to rise, and you will not be the last." The figure raised its hand, and the chamber's walls rippled again, a portal opening in the center of the room. Through it, Celine glimpsed a fleet, an entire armada, vast and silent, its ships long abandoned and drifting in space. The Ghost Fleet. "Your choice has already been made," the entity said, its voice carrying a weight that was almost unbearable. "Now you will face the consequences." Before Celine could react, the portal collapsed, leaving them once again in silence. But the meaning was clear. The real battle was just beginning, and the Ghost Fleet would not let them leave unscathed. "Captain," Mira said, her voice tremulous but steady, "we need to leave. Now." Celine nodded, her mind racing. They had what they came for, but at what cost? And now, the true test of humanity's resolve would begin. The Eos's shuttle sped away from the ancient structure, the hum of the engines the only sound cutting through the tense silence. Celine sat in the cockpit, her hands steady on the controls, though her mind was anything but calm. The encounter with the entity, whoever or whatever it was, left her with more questions than answers. The images, the voice, the mysterious warning about humanity's nature, it all felt like a riddle that she wasn't sure she was ready to solve. Behind her, Mira, Jackson, and the rest of the crew sat in uneasy silence. They had all felt the overwhelming presence of the entity, its words echoing in their minds long after the portal had closed. The ghost fleet. Was it truly a relic of a past civilization, or something much more dangerous, something alive? And what did the figure mean when it said, "You are not the first to rise"? Celine's eyes flickered to the displays in front of her, the EO's sensors still scanning the area around the structure. There was no immediate threat, but that didn't ease the gnawing feeling in her gut. She couldn't shake the sense that they had stirred something much older, and far more powerful than they had ever anticipated. "We've cleared the sector," Mira said, her voice breaking the silence. "The structure is gone from our scans. It's like it was never there." "Impossible," Jackson muttered from his seat. "We saw it with our own eyes. It was real. That thing was real." "We know," Celine replied, her voice low. "But the EO's sensors don't lie. We have to assume that the entity's influence has cloaked it somehow, but that doesn't mean it's gone." "What was that fleet we saw through the portal?" Mira asked, her tone thoughtful. "Those ships, they looked ancient, abandoned. The size of them, though?" "I'm not sure," Celine admitted. "But I don't think it was just a fleet. The ghost fleet. It's a warning, a reminder that someone, or something, has been watching humanity's every move." Suddenly, an alarm blared across the bridge, breaking the conversation. Celine's heart skipped a beat. She snapped her attention to the tactical screen, where a small, unidentified vessel was appearing on the outer edge of their sensor range. "It's moving fast," Mira reported. "Too fast to be human-made." "Can we identify it?" Celine asked, gripping her armrest. "No clear readings yet," Mira said, her fingers flying over her controls. "But its trajectory is heading straight for us." "Raise shields and prepare for evasive maneuvers," Celine ordered. "I want all weapons at full readiness. We're not getting caught off guard again." Jackson's voice crackled over the comms. "Captain, it's not firing, yet, but it's definitely locking onto us." Celine's mind raced. The Trion were still out there, relentless in their pursuit. Could this be another Trion force? Or was it something else? The warning from the entity about the consequences of their actions came flooding back. Could the ghost fleet have somehow activated something hostile? "Open a channel to the vessel," Celine ordered. "Let's see what it wants before we make any moves." The communication line hummed to life, and a voice came through, calm but chillingly distant. "Human vessel," it said, the accent strange, almost mechanical. "You have interfered with the power of the Forgotten Ones. You are not prepared for the consequences." Celine's grip on the armrests tightened, and she shared a glance with Mira. This was no Trion ship. The words were unmistakable. They came from something far older, something tied to the entity they had encountered. "What do you want from us?" Celine demanded, keeping her voice steady despite the growing tension. "You will learn what you have awakened. The price of your defiance will be steep. You will either join the ghost fleet or be lost to it." Before Celine could respond, a burst of energy lashed out from the strange vessel, striking the EO's shields with a force that rattled the entire ship. The lights flickered, and alarms blared again, this time signaling a critical drop in their energy reserves. "Shields are down to 30%, Captain," Mira reported, her voice tight with urgency. "We're not letting this ship destroy us," Celine growled. "Return fire. We won't go down without a fight." She flicked the command for the weapons systems, and the EO's forward cannons fired, a barrage of energy bolts, slamming into the enemy vessel. The shots hit, but the alien craft's shields absorbed the impact effortlessly. It retaliated immediately, another blast of energy that rocked the EO's once again. "Captain, Jackson called out from his station. They're not just attacking. They're disabling us. I don't think they intend to destroy us outright. They're keeping us alive for something. Then let's give them a reason to regret that decision. Celine snapped. She punched in a series of commands, rerouting power to the ship's engines and preparing a full strike. But just as she was about to issue the order, a new signal broke through the comms. It wasn't the enemy. This one was familiar. Captain Albright, came the voice of Dr. Naomi Farron, her tone urgent. You found it, haven't you? The artifact. The ghost fleet. The truth about your people's future. You must listen, Captain, before it's too late. Humanity's survival doesn't just depend on fighting. It depends on understanding what you've awakened. Celine's pulse quickened. Dr. Farron, where are you? What's going on? The voice crackled with static, but one last sentence came through, sharp and clear. The Ghost Fleet is not just a threat. It's a test. A test to see if humanity is worthy to carry on. The line went silent, leaving Celine staring at the empty comm channel, her mind racing. The stakes were higher than ever, and now a new challenge had emerged, understanding the very forces that could either save or destroy humanity. Prepare for whatever comes next, she said, voice steady but filled with resolve. We fight on our terms now. The eels trembled as another blast hit their shields, sending a pulse of shockwaves through the hull. Celine's knuckles were white as she gripped the command console. The alien ship was relentless, its weapons striking with cold precision, as though it had been designed to torment rather than destroy. But Celine knew they couldn't keep absorbing this kind of punishment for much longer. Shields at 10%, Captain. Mira called out. We can't take much more of this. Celine didn't hesitate. Jackson, get us out of here. Warp jump now. I'm on it. Jackson's voice came through, frantic, as he worked the controls. But the ship's systems are glitching. I don't think we can do a full jump with our engines in this state. Then get us out of range, Celine ordered. We just need a moment to regroup. Another blast rattled the ship, and the lights flickered. The sound of the enemy vessel's energy cannons rang in Celine's ears, and she felt the strain of their situation settle like a weight on her chest. Her thoughts flickered back to Dr. Farron's warning. A test. What kind of test? And why now? Had humanity's struggle against the Trion been a part of this larger, more cosmic trial all along? Captain, we're losing secondary systems. Mira called again. If we don't take evasive action now, do it. Celine snapped. With a violent jolt, the Eos lurched forward, narrowly dodging another barrage of energy from the alien ship. The alien vessel pursued them relentlessly, its silent, malevolent presence growing ever closer. But for a brief moment, they were free from the immediate threat. We're out of its direct line of fire, Jackson said, his voice tight. But it's still tracking us. I need more time to get the engines back online. We won't have that time, Celine said, her voice grim. We need to figure out what's really going on. The enemy might be waiting for us to make a mistake. Her mind raced. If the alien ship was merely a harbinger of the Forgotten One's will, then it wasn't just a weapon. It was a messenger. She had to understand its purpose. Dr. Farron had given her a piece of the puzzle, but there were still too many unknowns. Captain, Mira's voice broke through her thoughts. That signal from Dr. Farron, it's still active. I'm trying to enhance it. Do it, Celine said. We need answers. Seconds later, a crackling, distorted voice came through the comms once more, though this time it was clearer than before. Captain Albright. Dr. Farron's voice came through, urgent and steady, despite the static interference. Listen carefully. The Ghost Fleet is more than a fleet. It's a prison. A prison for the very force that destroyed the civilization that built it. You've seen the visions. The fleet is a warning, a test. If you are to survive, you must understand this. The artifact you found is a key, but it is also a burden. You will not be allowed to wield its power unless you prove yourself worthy. Celine's breath caught. Worthy of what? Worthy to face the force that destroyed the Forgotten Ones, Farron's voice answered, the words laden with an unmistakable gravity. The artifact holds the key to defeating it, but only if you can confront what lies within it. The Ghost Fleet was meant to contain it. But now, it is your trial. Humanity's trial. Celine's gaze flickered to the crew, each of them gripped by the weight of Farron's words. The Eos was humanity's last ship. It was supposed to be their weapon against the Treon and any other threat. But now it seemed that the real battle lay not in the stars, but in their very hearts. The test, Celine muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. It's not just about surviving. It's about understanding what we've awakened. Yes, Farron confirmed, her voice clearer now, as though her words carried an undeniable finality. The Forgotten Ones. They weren't destroyed by an external force. They fell because they lost the will to survive. If humanity is to succeed where they failed, you must prove you have the strength to face the horrors that even they could not. Another blast from the enemy vessel sent the Eos lurching, snapping Celine back to the present. She looked at the crew, at the faces of the people who were relying on her to lead them through this impossible situation. "We're not giving up," Celine said, her voice hard as steel. "We'll pass this test. We'll prove we're worthy." "Captain," Jackson said, a note of urgency creeping into his voice. "The enemy ship is closing in again. They're not going to stop. Whatever this test is, they're part of it." Celine's thoughts raced. There was no room for error now. They had no choice but to move forward. The Ghost Fleet was more than just a weapon. It was a challenge, one that would push them to the very limits of their strength, will, and humanity. The cost of failure would be catastrophic. "Prepare the ship for battle," Celine said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "We're going to make it through this, together." With a fierce determination, she turned back to the controls, her fingers poised to engage the engines. The test had begun, and humanity would rise, or fall, on the strength of its will to survive. The Eos lurched again as another salvo struck, the hull groaning under the strain. This time, the impact felt different, stronger, more deliberate. The enemy ship, relentless in its pursuit, wasn't just trying to disable them. It was pushing them, testing their endurance. Celine could feel it in the air, the oppressive weight of the trial that had been thrust upon them. "Shields at 5%. Mira shouted, her voice laced with urgency. "We won't last much longer at this rate." Celine's fingers flew over the controls, but she knew that no amount of evasive action or rerouting power would change their predicament. They were trapped, and the enemy ship was not going to give up until it had seen humanity's resolve tested to its breaking point. "Jackson, can you get the engines online?" Celine demanded, her mind whirring with possibilities. "I'm trying, Captain," Jackson replied, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked feverishly at his station. "The damage is severe, but I might be able to get us a short jump. It'll be enough to break their lock on us, if we're lucky." Celine gritted her teeth, watching the tactical readouts. The enemy was almost in firing range again. The pulse of energy weapons, bright and menacing, lit up the dark void between them like streaks of lightning. "We don't have time for luck, Jackson," she snapped. "You've got one shot at this. Make it count." The crew was silent, each of them steeling themselves for what was coming. The message from Dr. Farron echoed in Celine's mind: humanity's trial. It was no longer about defeating the enemy before them. It was about proving their worthiness to survive the trials of the Forgotten Ones. The ship shook again, more violently this time, and Celine was thrown back in her seat. The lights flickered as the Yeos shuddered, but the pain of the hit was quickly drowned out by the adrenaline rushing through her veins. They couldn't give up. They couldn't lose. "Hold steady," she barked, her voice a calm command in the chaos. Myra's voice came through, tight with tension. "Captain, we're almost at full capacity. We'll be able to make the jump in 5 seconds." 5 seconds, Celine repeated, the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. She knew this would be their last chance. Failure would mean death, not just for them, but for the entire human race. Do it. With a hiss of energy and the sharp whine of the failing engines, the Yeos lurched forward, entering a jump sequence. For a heart-stopping moment, Celine felt her stomach drop as the ship warped through space. The familiar stars stretched into streaks of light, and for an instant it felt like they were falling through the fabric of the universe itself. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the ship snapped back into normal space. Status report. Celine barked, her eyes scanning the screens. "Jump successful," Jackson said, his voice shaking slightly with the weight of what had just happened. "We're clear of their immediate tracking range, but I don't know how long we have before they regroup." Celine exhaled sharply, relief flooding through her for just a moment. They were alive, but that didn't mean they were safe. "Not safe, Captain," Mira warned, her eyes wide with concern. "The energy readings I'm picking up from the Ghost Fleet are still increasing. We've only delayed the inevitable." Celine's mind raced. The Ghost Fleet wasn't just hunting them, it was waiting. Waiting for humanity to fail. "Can we get a read on their intentions?" Celine asked, pacing in front of the command table. "They're circling," Mira replied. "They're not leaving us alone. This test, it's not just physical. It's a trial of our very spirit. The Ghost Fleet is showing us that if we're to survive, we have to prove we deserve it, every single step of the way." As she listened, a realization hit Celine with the force of a blow. The enemy ship, the one that had pursued them relentlessly, wasn't just an enemy. It was the first part of the trial. Their failure or success here wasn't about overcoming just one obstacle. It was about testing whether humanity could endure against an unrelenting force. The Ghost Fleet was a test of will, one that would push them, break them, and ultimately decide if they were fit to inherit the legacy of the Forgotten Ones. The truth was staring her in the face. She wasn't just trying to defeat an alien force. She was fighting to prove that humanity deserved to survive, to grow, and to ascend. "Captain," Mira interrupted, breaking Celine's thoughts. "I've detected a strange signal emanating from deep within the Ghost Fleet. It's unlike anything we've encountered, almost like a beacon. I think it might be some kind of challenge." "A challenge?" Celine echoed, her mind working through the possibilities. A way to show humanity's worth. "It's possible," Mira confirmed. "We've got to go in, Captain. We have to face whatever this challenge is if we want to win this trial." Celine stared at the star field beyond them, the looming shadow of the Ghost Fleet still hanging in the distance. She knew what had to be done. "Set course for the signal," she ordered. "We face the challenge head-on. We don't turn away from it. We prove that humanity is ready for what's to come." The crew rallied around her words, their resolve hardening. The trial was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. "Prepare for whatever lies ahead," Celine said, her voice steady and sure. "We will not fail." The Eos moved cautiously through the vast expanse of space, its engines humming quietly beneath them. Celine stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the glowing blip on the star map, the strange beacon emanating from deep within the heart of the Ghost Fleet. The rest of the crew was tense, but none of them spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with the weight of their collective uncertainty. Every one of them knew this was more than just a mission. It was a test, a trial of everything humanity stood for. Approaching the signal, Mira called out, breaking the stillness. "It's stronger now, almost like it's pulling us in. The Ghost Fleet's ships are still watching us. They're waiting." "We don't have the luxury of waiting," Celine replied firmly. "We go in now. Let's face this trial head-on." Her words, sharp and unyielding, reverberated through the ship's corridors, instilling a sense of resolve in the crew. They had faced overwhelming odds before, and they would do so again. But this was different. The stakes were higher than they could have ever imagined. Their future, humanity's future, was on the line. As they neared the center of the Ghost Fleet, the fleet's ominous presence loomed larger. The ships, silent and massive, hung in the dark like a graveyard of forgotten civilizations. They looked as though they had been abandoned, yet the pulse of energy radiating from the fleet was undeniable, as though the entire armada was alive waiting. "Captain," Jackson said, his voice tight. "I'm detecting something unusual, something inside the fleet. It's not just the beacon. There's a structure hidden within the ships, something ancient." "Is it the source of the signal?" Celine asked, her pulse quickening. "How close are we?" "It's just ahead," Jackson confirmed. "We're almost within range now." "On alert," Celine ordered. "We're entering unknown territory. Stay sharp." The Eos slid into the heart of the fleet, and for a moment, the entire crew felt a chill, as if the very fabric of space around them had thickened. The stars were blotted out, swallowed by the sheer scale of the Ghost Fleet, which seemed to stretch on forever. It was a feeling of being both too small and too important at the same time. A sense that the entire universe was watching them, waiting for them to make a choice. Myra's voice was low but urgent. "I'm receiving strange readings. The structure's interior is fluctuating, like it's shifting in real time. I can't get a solid lock on it." "Keep trying," Celine said, her jaw clenched. "We need to understand what we're dealing with before we go any further." As they approached the structure, it came into view, a massive, spherical object suspended within the heart of the Ghost Fleet. It was larger than anything they had ever encountered, its surface shimmering with an eerie light, almost as if it were alive. Deep grooves ran along its surface, like veins coursing with an unknown energy. This is it," Jackson whispered, awe and dread in his voice. "The heart of the fleet. Whatever it is, it's ancient." Celine's breath caught in her throat. The sphere was the culmination of their journey, a relic of the forgotten ones, a testament to a civilization that had risen then fallen. She could feel its pull, its energy drawing them closer, as if the very ship itself was being beckoned toward the center of the fleet. "We need to get inside," she said. "If this is truly the key to humanity's future, we can't hesitate." "We're not equipped to breach something like this," Mira pointed out. "The structure's energy field is preventing our sensors from getting accurate readings, and there's no indication of an entrance." "Then we make one," Celine said. Prepare a boarding party. We're going in." The decision was swift, and the crew immediately went into action. Celine, Mira, Jackson, and a few other trusted officers gathered in the shuttle bay, preparing to board the mysterious structure. Celine's mind raced as she donned her combat gear. The Ghost Fleet, the Forgotten Ones, and the trial they had now found themselves in. It was all building to this moment. Whatever lay ahead, humanity's future would depend on what they found in that strange, otherworldly sphere. The shuttle detached from the Eos, cutting through the cold, silent void toward the sphere. As they approached, Celine could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Every decision had led to this. Every battle, every sacrifice, every ounce of strength they had put into surviving the alien onslaught, all had brought them to this final test. The shuttle's engines whined as they docked with the sphere. The air was thick with tension as the crew suited up, ready for whatever lay behind the surface. Celine took a deep breath, her pulse steadying. "Let's go," she said, her voice unwavering. The hatch opened, and they stepped into the unknown. The interior of the sphere was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was vast. Endless corridors stretched in every direction, lined with glowing symbols and alien machinery that hummed with energy. The walls seemed to pulse with life, and Celine could feel the weight of something ancient and powerful pressing down on her. At the far end of the chamber stood an altar-like structure, bathed in a strange light. It was there, she knew, that they would find the answers, or the end. As they moved forward, Celine felt a familiar presence, a voice, soft but clear, echo in her mind. "Humanity has arrived. Will you prove worthy?" The trial had begun, and this time there would be no turning back. The air within the sphere was heavy, filled with an oppressive energy that seemed to hum through every fibre of Celine's body. She could feel it deep in her chest, vibrating against her ribcage like the heartbeat of an ancient, slumbering beast awakening. Every step she took, every breath she drew, seemed to echo in the vast, unyielding silence. The walls themselves seemed alive, pulsing, shifting, responding to their presence. The strange symbols that adorned the chamber glowed faintly, casting a haunting light on the floor beneath them. "Captain, what is this place?" Mira whispered, her voice barely audible in the stillness. "I don't know," Celine replied, her gaze fixed on the distant altar that stood like a monolith at the far end of the chamber. "But I feel it's waiting for us." As they moved forward, the crew fell into formation, weapons at the ready, though none of them truly knew what to expect. They had come this far, crossing the threshold into the unknown, but now the gravity of the moment was palpable. This was humanity's last test, the final trial to prove their worth. The altar, a towering structure of shimmering metal and crystal, stood bathed in a strange ethereal light. At its base, a series of intricate patterns seemed to pulse and shift as though they were alive. A soft, almost imperceptible hum emanated from the altar, and Celine could feel it deep within her bones, resonating with something inside her that she didn't fully understand. "Stay alert," she ordered, her voice sharp as she advanced toward the altar. As they approached, the symbols on the altar seemed to glow brighter, and then, without warning, a voice filled the chamber. It was not spoken aloud, but rather transmitted directly into their minds, sharp and alien, yet unmistakably familiar. "Humanity, you have come far." Celine's heart raced. The voice, deep and resonant, echoed in the back of her mind, reverberating through every inch of her being. There was a weight to it, as if it was not just speaking to her, but to every human who had ever lived. "Your trial is nearly complete, but there is one final question. The voice paused, and the air seemed to thicken. A chill ran down Celine's spine as she waited for what came next. What is the nature of your will? Will you fight for survival, or will you embrace the potential of your kind and accept your place among the stars? Celine stepped forward, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She knew the question was more than philosophical. It was a test of humanity itself. Every choice they had made, every hardship they had faced, had led to this singular moment. The trials, the losses, the sacrifices, all had been shaping them for this challenge. But how would they answer? She took a deep breath, her voice steady as she spoke, not just for herself, but for the entire crew, for humanity's future. We will fight for more than just survival. We will fight to create, to build, to protect what is ours. We will embrace the stars, not as conquerors, but as explorers, united, together, and stronger than ever before. There was a long silence. The air ran them thick with expectation. Then, slowly, the hum of the altar grew louder, resonating through the entire chamber, until the walls themselves seemed to tremble. A brilliant light burst forth from the altar, filling the room with a blinding radiance. For a moment, Celine couldn't see anything at all, but the light burned with a strange intensity, like a star had exploded inside the chamber. "You have proven worthy," the voice intoned, its tone rich with power and finality. "Humanity will not be lost. You will ascend." As the light reached its peak, Celine felt something shift inside her. It was as if the very fabric of reality itself had fractured for a moment, and in that fracture, something ancient and powerful had awoken. The air around her seemed to vibrate, the hum of the altar now vibrating through her entire body, her mind, her soul. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light vanished, leaving the chamber eerily quiet once more. Celine blinked, trying to adjust to the sudden darkness. Her eyes, still dazzled by the intensity of the light, began to focus again. She looked around the room at her crew. They were all standing there, awestruck, staring at her. "It's done," Celine whispered, her voice barely a breath. She could feel it. They had done it. Humanity had passed the trial. But it wasn't just about passing a test. It was about something far greater. Humanity had now earned its place among the stars. The Ghost Fleet, once a symbol of a fallen civilization, had now become a bridge to something else. A future full of potential, of exploration, and of unity. "The fleet is gone," Mira said, her voice trembling. "The ships, they've vanished. The entire fleet has disappeared." Celine nodded slowly, her heart racing. "We're free. We've proven we are worthy." But just as the words left her mouth, a new voice filled the chamber, this time softer, more intimate. "You have passed the trial," the voice whispered. "Now you must remember. The true challenge is not in surviving, but in forging your future together." The walls of the chamber began to dissolve, the reality around them shifting, warping into something new. And as the sphere began to fade from existence, Selena knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity's place among the stars had been secured. The trial was over. But the journey had just begun.